You ever just have one of those weeks where you're kind of fried at the end of the week and, you know, you just end up sitting there scrolling through your phone and looking at, I don't know, news articles or memes, I don't know, whatever people look at online these days. Anyway, I actually found myself doing that the other day, looking through and looking up some updates. In particular, I came across one for Miya Marcano. So I don't know if people know enough about this case. This one was overshadowed. It happened back in September of 2021. That was a very hectic time, especially in like the US justice system. So anybody who really watches any true crime stuff, reads the news, and I mean, it's everywhere. You really can't avoid it. But if you had been around at that time and you had been paying attention, this may not have been a story that you heard about. There were, like I said, other big cases going on at the time, not only in the court system, but other missing person cases that were really big at the time. I think it kind of ended up to where Mia didn't get as much coverage as, maybe she should have. Who knows? Maybe it would have helped, but it's unfortunate that it didn't, but there has been good to come out of it from the family, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Mia Marcano was 19 years old. She had graduated high school in 2020, and she was pursuing an arts degree. While she was working through to get her degree, she had moved up to Orlando. The rest of her family lived in southern Florida, so she had moved up to Orlando and she was going to school. She worked part-time at an apartment complex that she also got to live at. I've heard of people being able to do this and get like discounts. She had a pretty good deal there. On top of all of that, she had a really loving family and she did a lot of different fun events. If you look up Mia Marcano online, you'll see such beautiful pictures. She's so full of life and you can see it. I think she had to just been wonderful to know. So, on September 24th of 2021, it was a Friday. Mia had just gotten off of work and her dad had surprised her. I'm not sure when he surprised her with the tickets. I don't think it was that afternoon, but he had surprised her with some tickets to come down and see the family in Fort Lauderdale. That was the plan. Mia never showed up, though. Mia never even got on the plane. So when the family realized that Mia was missing, they all jumped into action right away. I mean, it was quick. They actually ended up uh, driving all the way from Fort Lauderdale to Orlando and getting there early, early the next morning to try and help with everything. Before the family was able to get down there, they had the deputy go over to the apartment complex. They called the authorities and they had them show up. And the deputy that showed up was able to meet up with Mia's roommate. He went into the apartment and they tried to open her door, but it was locked. And I guess this wasn't something that was new. Mia did that at the house. So, I mean, I get it. You want your privacy or whatever. And 19, I don't know, roommates, it's a whole thing, I get it. Um, anyway, they weren't able to get into Mia's room, so what they did was they got out of the apartment, and then they walked around, and they went to her window. Now, you shouldn't have been able to get through the window, because Mia's dad, very loving man, he has so many pictures of her, you can just see she was just one of the lights of his life, and I feel for him. I'm happy though that he's been able to work at some good. I think that that's the best way to honor someone's memory when you lose them like that. Regardless, when they went over to the window, they were actually able to open it more than, I think it was like 4 inches, is what the report had said, where you shouldn't have been able to open the window past 4 inches. What ended up happening then is the deputy realized that the window was able to open up wider. He asked the roommate to go through the window, and I don't know, that's weird, right? That feels a little bit weird, I think. I don't know. Better than breaking a door, I guess. It's just an odd decision. Anyway, so when the roommate got in the room, she saw jewelry on the floor. There was this little like shelf thing that was wedged up against the doorknob to where you couldn't open the door from the outside, and that's what was locking it and making it to where they couldn't get in. But it didn't look how they would have expected Mia to leave her room. And I think there was also a report that they had her bag was there, her bag that she had packed to go home and see her family. So, you know how Mia had just started working at the apartment complex about 4 months prior? There was actually another person who started at that same time. His name was Armando Caballero. He was 27 years old and he was a maintenance worker there. He became so obsessed with her, it was disgusting. So, who becomes the prime suspect? That fucking creep that doesn't know how to take no for an answer. Now, remember, Armando was a maintenance man there. So, not only was he suspicious because of the way that he interacted with Mia, but being a maintenance man, he had a key for all of the apartments, all of them, unrestricted access. Now, when he was first questioned, because he gets spoken to by the authorities more than once, when they first questioned him, he tried to say that he had last seen her at 3 and didn't see her after that. There is a video recording of him driving a golf cart around her apartment around the time that they think that she might have gone missing. But there's just not much out there on it. It's, you know, it seems like he knew the positioning, which I mean, being a maintenance man, of course he probably would. But it seems like whatever he did, he knew the positioning of the cameras and he knew how to get by them without being seen. So, September 25th, the deputy from the day prior, Deputy Paulino, came back to the apartment complex to try and find out more of what was going on. They were desperately searching for Mia, and Mia's family was there. And they knew about that Armando creep and they actually pointed him out to the deputy. Okay. The deputy ended up going over and looking in his car, just as Mia's family had said to. They found an empty phone case, and there was a blanket in there, and then a screwdriver in a bag. Just, I mean, things that you might be able to just pass off as whatever, but the blanket looked like it was familiar. They were thinking that maybe it was Mia's blanket. So, when the deputy went to speak with Armando, there wasn't enough there. And while he was trying to speak with Armando, the family, Mia's family, was right there and it became a problem. So they ended up separating the family and Armando. Even though they were separated, the family was still persistent. And there was a maintenance shed that they were hearing noises out of. And they demanded that the deputy go and check and that Armando shows them through. And they opened the door. No Mia. Mia wasn't there. I'm glad that they actually checked, but it's unfortunate that she wasn't found. Now, because she wasn't found in there and because there was no solid enough anything, I guess, based on what the deputy felt, the deputy ended up letting Armando go. But Mia's family didn't. They actually followed him to his apartment. Okay. And then what do they see? They see him fucking taking inside that shit from his car. Okay. What are you doing, man? And then they get to see and they see, yeah, it is Mia's blanket. So the family members, Mia's family that were there, they ended up calling the authorities again. All right. But now Armando didn't live in the apartments that they worked at. He lived in a different apartment complex with a roommate. And Armando that day was there with his roommate and another person. It wasn't really clear who the person was. Now we're still on September 25th. When the officer comes over from the new district that they're in, because it's it's a it's a different jurisdiction. When that officer gets there, the officer goes and knocks on the door and he speaks with Armando. He asks if Armando has Mia, and Armando says no and actually lets him in the apartment. The family was insistent. They wanted it checked out. So the officer checked out the apartment. Yet again, Mia was not found. And I get how, I mean, I can imagine how difficult it must have been to be her family at that time, just looking and knowing that it had to be him. And I listen, listen, okay? I know that there was not enough evidence to like convict him in a court at that point in time. But why didn't they actually bring him in for questioning? I don't know. I feel like the obsessive stuff, that's it. That's it. You know, I know you did it. You're obsessed as fuck. And what do people who are obsessed like that do? Come on. That was above and beyond. Anyway, just my opinion, which is all this is, by the way. Just a little box here. Anyway, uh, so the officer let Armando go. And on top of that, the officer told Mia's family to stay away, leave him alone. They had no right to follow him, which I don't know. I uh I can empathize with the family on that one. But anyway, so they separate. So the next day, September 26th, Armando goes missing. The deputy doesn't know where he's at. This is the deputy from the original jurisdiction. Okay. So, what he ends up doing is he ends up going over to Armando's family's house and he ends up talking to Armando's family. And they all insist no, Armando would not do anything like that. There's no way he has anything to do with a missing girl. And then they start talking about him the last time they saw him, which they had said was about 3 weeks prior. And they said that he had come over to the house with a woman who had a baby, but they couldn't recall her name or it wasn't in the report, something like that. It doesn't surprise me. This case unfortunately never ended up going to court. So um, the officer or the deputy, I'm sure, just could thank them and leave. I mean, what else is there to do? So they're still looking for Armando. They're still looking for Mia. And, the family's probably thinking, okay, well, we find Armando, we find Mia. Absolutely, that makes sense. Now, Armando ended up being found first. He was found on September 27th. Now, unfortunately, he was not able to be questioned and go through justice in the court of law. They found him hanged. He had hung himself in a maintenance shed. Can you imagine the hopeless feeling of thinking once you find him, you'll find Mia, and then you can't ask him any questions? I'm sure just the not knowing where she was and then seeing that he had offed himself, I mean, that had to be hard. That's too cruel. And, it took them more time to find Mia. They didn't find her right away after finding Armando, but they did end up taking his phone. You know how it tracks us everywhere we go? Well, he had a phone with him, and that phone had tracked where he had gone, and it had seen him go to a different apartment complex. And this was around the time that they think that same afternoon that Mia had gone missing. The officers, the deputies, the authorities, they ended up finding Mia on October 2nd. And I'm going to talk about how she was found, but I just want to let everyone know it's tough. It's difficult to hear. Um, so if you don't think that you can handle that, skip right now, skip this little part. Um, I want to make sure that you're taking care of yourself, and you're not hearing things that could be more triggering. Mia was found with her hands and feet bound by duct tape and duct tape over her mouth. Even though it had been only 8 days since she had gone missing, her remains were basically skeletonized. That's Florida, end of summer. Uh, it can happen quick there. So I don't know. I was surprised to see that it was that quick. I don't know. I wasn't expecting it. Um, Along with the duct tape, she was wearing her jeans, a bra, and a robe. And then they found her purse close by. I think I saw somewhere it was written that it was leaning against her, and another source said that it was close to her. So, um, regardless, they ended up finding Mia. The police could only just puzzle piece everything together from there. There was no one left, as far as they know, that was involved to be able to tell what happened to Mia. So basically, what the officers believe happened is they think that Armando had let himself into her apartment. What the fuck, right? Anyway, he had let himself into her apartment. Sorry, I can't get over that. Just, I don't know. Imagining your stalker, your creepy person that you know, because I think a lot of people know somebody creepy, and just thinking, what if that creepy person has the key to my home? Just incredibly uncomfortable. So they believe that he ended up taking the key and hiding out in her apartment, waiting for her to get off of work, and that was that was it. They think that he assaulted her, and they think he took her out through the window, and that's why the lock that Mia's dad had installed was not there. And that's why the roommate was able to get in through that window. The authorities believe that he had taken her from her window and then placed her in his trunk and then dumped her afterwards. Because Mia was skeletonized, or mostly skeletonized at least, they were not able to actually have the tissues and the bodily fluids that they needed to be able to see and put together a more clear picture. So a lot of it's really fuzzy, but I mean, they did their best. I believe that Armando's the one that did it. To me, there's no other option. It doesn't make sense if anybody else did it, and I think that he did it alone. The toll that this took on Mia's family, really, I mean, the toll that being having a loved one being the victim of a murder would take is just terrible. And especially for a child, I have heard that that is the worst. And I always have love for people who have gone through that. I it I think it may break me if I ever had to go through that, but maybe not. Hopefully that's a never for me. Anyway, what her family did was they ended up pulling out good out of this situation. Really cool thing that they did, they actually got a law passed in Florida called Mia's Law, and it regulates who can have the all access keys to apartments when there's people who are working in an apartment complex and they have master keys. And then it also requires landlords to provide a 24-hour notice before entering any residence. Mia Marcano's family ended up launching a foundation, the Mia Marcano Foundation, and this helps with accreditations for apartment complexes that are deemed to have safe practices in place. Something that helps give you a better guide and an idea of what you're getting into when you're going to be signing away most of the time, at least 12 months of your life to be at. So, important to make sure that's safe. Well, if you ended up hanging out for the whole story, thank you. Listen, okay, I know I get chatty, so bear with me here. And you have a great day.